Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we've got award-winning artist Rick Burchett live in studio, and we've got Emmy award-winning director Dan Riba on the phone. We're talking Batman the Animated Series, still celebrating the 30th anniversary of this groundbreaking show. Stand by. We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors, 4 Hogwarts houses, 1 ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all. And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to all of you. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're streaming us out there in the world, no video tonight. I'm so sorry. So for those of you who are on YouTube and Facebook, hopefully you've switched over to either the streaming web or you're listening on the KTRS app or you're just doing the old-fashioned radio if you're in the greater St. Louis area. We are still celebrating, as we are all month long in September, Batman the Animated Series. 30 years ago, September 5th, 1992, this groundbreaking show made its debut. Last week, we talked with Andrea Romano for the entire hour, all about the voice casting, the directing, how she finds the voice for these characters, what she needed to do to get the voice out of certain people that she needed. If you missed that one, it's on the website. Go over to geektomeradio.com and hit the link for Andrea Romano under Celebrity Interviews, and it'll be right there, our last episode up. And we're kind of celebrating from all aspects, so I'm very excited. We've got another 2 guests who have both returned to the show again. We've got 3-time Eisner Award-winning artist Rick Burchett, who obviously worked extensively on Batman the Adventures for the DC comic book supplementing the DC show. And then we've got director Dan Riba, 3-time Eisner Award. And I was looking, were those 3 Eisner Awards, were those all for directing, Dan, or were some of those for writing?
They were Emmy Awards.
Actually, they were Emmy Awards. Yeah.
That's why I meant Emmy. My goodness, if I could.
Yeah. But I do have one Eisner, actually.
You do have an Eisner?
Thanks. I do. Thanks to my very talented coworkers. We all did a comic together, the Batman Holiday Special. And surprise to us, it won. It won in '95. So I have. It says and others because I'm others, but it's like Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and others, and that's that's me.
And so I don't know. Have you and Rick ever met before, Dan?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, Dan, we did briefly.
Okay,
good. At San Diego about 2 million years ago.
Okay.
You came up and introduced yourself to me as I was signing things at the DC booth.
Well, that's what happened. It was madness at the convention, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, I love your work, and I'm glad I did that.
I am too.
Because we're really happy with the way those comics came out, and you did a wonderful job. So
well,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
So as we kind of dig in here there's so many places to start. I'm going to start with Rick for a minute. Obviously, the comic book came out within the same time frame, like within a year of the actual series itself. How did that work for the lot of you who were doing that? Were there storyboards and say this has to be in this style? Were there parameters given to you? Were they very strict?
They wanted the book to look like the TV series, and to that end, they appointed me the continuity cop.
Oh, okay.
I was the guy who was supposed to make sure that everything was on model, if at all possible, and Warner Animation could not have been nicer to us. They gave me everything I could possibly need. to keep things as on model as possible. I mean, copies of background paintings, storyboards, model sheets, turnarounds, attitudes, the series Bible.
Wow.
You name it, I had it, and I still have it all. Mm-hmm. So it was, and also there was somebody, and Dan, maybe you know who this was, but there was somebody on staff at Warner Animation who was on call, who we could call at any time and say, I need this, and they would send it to us.
Any ideas who that might have been, Dan?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We have a few, the associate producers that probably would have fit the bill for that position. Because I don't know. I don't know.
A lot of people obviously went into making this series the success it was, and like I said, we talked last week with Andrea, and she couldn't even, all the names she was rattling off. Well, there were obviously this person. So I mean, it literally took a lot of people with a lot of hard work. Obviously, because we're still talking about this series 30 years later. It's insane to think about.
Yeah, it is.
I'm wondering, Dan, how did when you were directing, if I'm not mistaken, you did 10 episodes of the original 85. How was that selection process done? Did you guys step up and say, oh, I want this one, or oh, this would be great? Did they pair you based on the writing style? How did you guys get selected for who was going to direct what episode?
It was usually luck of the draw, and sometimes there were things that just seemed like, okay, that seems more like a Dan show, like Baby Doll. They would like, okay, this. It was sort of, I was sort of in mind, I think, when that came up, because I really that was sort of my wheelhouse. You know, it was an odd, quirky show, and I like doing cartoony stuff, but it was also, so it fit me really well. There were times though, I didn't have that many picks of stuff, but then I remember there was some Harley show that I was supposed to go. I think Harley's Holiday, and Kevin Altieri took it from me because he insisted he didn't have a Harley show, and he really wanted to do her. I mean, the character on the show. And
thank you for clarifying.
So,
yes.
Yeah, and so so that was one case where he took it from me and he apologizes, and I'm like, you know what, he did a wonderful job. I'm fine with that. That's okay. He did great. He did great on it.
And then as the series evolved, obviously, you got to also do the new Batman Adventures, and obviously with the spin-off Batman Beyond, so there were a lot of stories you did get to take cracks at throughout the run of this entire franchise.
Right.
So with the stories that you worked on, I'm curious from your standpoint, because obviously Andrea came in, talked to the people about finding their voice. From now the directing standpoint, what was it like? Did Andrea kind of work through the script with them, and then they turned them over to you? Did you kind of co-direct with Andrea, and she was kind of getting the voice for what you wanted, and you were kind of talking to Andrea? How did the process work there?
Well, the process worked in a way that you sit back and let geniuses do their thing. So I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to. She really, really did her homework on these scripts and really understood the character motivation. So you take that as your cue. And because I'm dealing mostly with the visuals, and I'm dealing with the acting, but on a visual standpoint. So you get into the room and you hear her going over the scripts with the actors, and I just thought she was just innately a genius, but no, she really worked really, really hard. She'd get up at 4 a.m. and go over the scripts and over the scripts and over the scripts, trying to ask questions about everybody's motivation and really understand these stories. So when we get in for the read through, you would, the actors would all set up and they would start reading the script, and she would go over all the screen direction and the character motivation to some degree, and then you'd get a feel for the show during the first read through, and then the actors would go away. Bruce, Andrea, and myself would kind of discuss how things went. If there's an accent that wasn't quite landing, if there was something that the character needs to do with more of this or more of that, and then she would take that information and go into the record and give that to the actors, and gently nudge them. She was always really great about not telling somebody how to read something. She was always just wonderful way of corralling an actor to do what you need for the show. And I was mostly concerned with distances or voice levels, or okay, how long is this scream going to be? Because we don't know how long this cliff is that they're falling off of. There's a helicopter going on, so there's going to be a noise going on, so we have to make sure that they're screaming. Things like that. All the nuts and bolts that you don't want to get, surprises of when you're boarding and you realize that the voice track doesn't match the visual. So that was kind of what I was doing there mostly, because I wouldn't presume to tell the actors what to do. That was well taken care of by Andrea.
And Rick, obviously, when you guys are working on this, you're drawing it, you're inking, you're doing all this stuff. I can't imagine, because I can't read a comic book, be it the animated adventures like the ones that Alan was just doing that you were drawing, or even like the regular comics that are out now, without hearing Kevin Conroy's voice. So when you're drawing and inking these, are you hearing Mark Hamill's Joker when you're drawing, or are you hearing John Glover's Riddler?
Oh yeah. It's in fact, Kevin Conroy asked me that one time. He said, does the way I read a line affect you when you're drawing these characters? And I said, yeah, it does, because there are so few lines and we don't have movement or sound. Any little nuance that we can put into the art, especially with Batman, who has no lower lip and just a slash of a mouth, and you can't see his eyes, and so facial expressions are really they are minute. It's just the quirk of a mouth, the way a mouth is set, the way how long it is. Mm-hmm. Things like that that indicate what the character's saying. That's something that I'm really, really hard on myself about, is the fact that I would like my characters to be good actors.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting.
And all you have is facial expression and body language. Comics are, they compare comics and film, and that's true to a certain extent. But there are two things that we don't have. Three things actually. We don't have movement, we don't have sound, and we can't control how fast the reader takes the material in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like film can.
Sure.
The sudden reveal. We can't do that. Or if we do it, they can jump ahead and look and see.
Right.
So yeah, having those actors do those voices and be able to call those voices up, it helps a lot.
So what I'm hearing then, Rick, is your job is harder than Dan's.
No.
I'm kidding, obviously. I'm kidding.
No, it is.
No. It's just that drawing comics is hard.
Yeah, I'm sure. I couldn't do it.
I will defend it to my dying day. But it's a different animal than film. There are so many more components that go into making a film. Let's face it. Here I am in the 21st century, still earning my living with a pencil and a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's when you put it like that.
So yeah, all the components that go into making film make it a lot harder, I think.
One thing that I'm interested in, and I thought was very fascinating, because sometimes this isn't always the case, where the Batman Adventures comic book, and then when it evolved, Batman, the Adventures of Batman and Robin, came out with that second series, none of the issues of the comic were ever the same as anything that went on. You didn't do a comic episode of one of the TV show episodes, and vice versa. There was never that crossover, but the continuity ran through. Like, there's something that's going on in Batman the Adventures comic book. It's because we saw that already. We saw what happened with Mr. Freeze in the TV series itself. So this will be a question for both of you. I'll throw it back to Dan. Were you guys, when you were working on the show, were you guys reading and kind of keeping up with the comic book? Be like, oh, how cool is this? And likewise with Rick, but we'll start with Dan.
To some degree, yes. But I don't think we ever, at the time when we were working, we didn't really think of it as being all one, like it was continuity per se, because we weren't continuity people anyway. Comic book people are continuity people, but we were kind of like more, telling stories, and it didn't feel like one episode led into another, unless we were doing the Two-Face stuff, where we wanted definitely there be an arc for the where Harvey Dent started and where he ended up. But other than that, back in the beginning, we weren't really adhering to continuity that much. So we we weren't as we weren't as beholden to stuff. It's like, okay, they're doing that and we're doing this, and as it progressed, we kind of started to pay more attention, I think, a little bit as we progressed a little bit, and especially when we started adapting our with the Holiday Night story and Mad Love, then it's like, okay, well then those comics are canon, and so then it's like, okay, so everything else is too, and I wish we had done more of it in hindsight. I wish we had introduced more of the characters that were introduced in the comics. I'd like to have seen that that combination of what was Denny, Archie Goodwin, and Mike Carlin. Those guys parodied, caricatured. It would have been really cool to have done them in animation.
Right.
Yeah. The Terrible Three. Yeah.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. But we did do an comic adaptation of Mask of the Phantasm.
That is true.
Right.
Yes,
That's right. You did do that.
And also the second one, the Sub-Zero, the movie that came out. There were both of those.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we were adhering to the TV continuity. I mean, that was that's what they told us. They said, look, if it's not on TV, we're not doing it.
So you guys had that the ability to go to the producer or whoever it was to say, hey, we need this and this. But were you and Kelly and everybody else, were you guys watching the series to kind of say, oh, by the way, so you were really in real time keeping up with what you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. We had to.
Oh, okay.
Because if for instance, I was asked to draw a certain character and I hadn't seen that character, I'd have to call them and say, hey, do you have models on this character? But so if I kept up watching the show, which I did, I would know what characters had been on and what characters hadn't. And especially if they appeared more than once.
And you guys were watching it in real time. They weren't sending you tapes of it or anything like that. You guys were just keeping up.
Yeah, we were
just... That's silly. We should have sent you copies. Holy cow.
No, I had everything else. No, it was...
That seems crazy.
Yeah, I know. But no, we just worked from... I'll tell you what, when I took the job, when they offered me the job, all I had seen of it was the little 2-minute pilot that they had done.
Yeah.
And I had seen a bootleg copy of that,
same here.
Like 5 months before. Mm-hmm. And then Bobby Greenberger from DC called me and said, hey, we're going to do this book. Would you be interested in coming on board and being kind of our continuity guy and ink it and everything? And I said, yeah. But at the time, I thought myself, I said, because originally it was intended to be a 3-issue miniseries.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And at the time, I thought, this will be great, but there's no way they can keep up the quality on this TV series like is in this. And so I ate a lot of crow. But it was great. I mean, it was really, really cool because, like I say, I'd just seen that. And then they called and asked me to do the job, and I was like, okay, I'm your guy.
So when they reached out initially, they said they told you it's just going to be a 3-issue miniseries?
It jumped. They called and said it's going to be a 3-issue miniseries. There's going to be a different penciler on each issue. We want you to ink all 3 and maintain the look. I said, okay. 2 weeks later, they call me back. They say, it's going to be a 6-issue miniseries. We're going to have a different penciler on every 2 issues, and we want you to ink the whole thing.
Wow.
They call me back 2 weeks after that, and they say, it's going to be a monthly ongoing. We're going to have a different penciler every 3 issues, and you're going to ink the whole thing. And then we did, the first 3 were Ty Templeton, second 3 were Brad Rader. Third 3 were Mike Parabek,
right?
And then Scott Peterson, our editor, calls me and says, "Mike's our guy. He's going to be on it from now on." Mm-hmm. And so that was how it all evolved.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, I would guess that they started out with that because they weren't sure, but given how quickly people caught on to the success of the cartoon and how it was just a runaway hit, I'm assuming that may be why they went ahead and kept extending it. So Dan, when you first got attached, let me ask you that. How did you first get attached to the project?
Well, it's funny that you should mention the bootleg of that promo because, yes, I caught one of those. as well. And I was at another studio when I saw it, and it you know, my brain exploded when I saw it. It was absolutely incredible, and so I'm like, I have to work on this. And I was in the middle of developing a series based on the Little Nemo TMS movie that had come out, and they were doing a TV series based on it. And I'd been on it for almost a year, and we weren't selling it, and there was, you know, it was getting close, but then, you know, we got canned, and I was sort of like, oh man, this is too bad. And then I get a call from Kevin Altieri saying, hey, I'm on this Batman show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to come in. And so I'm like, yes, I got to, you know, I was born for that. And the other thing that was kind of funny about it was that I knew Bruce a little bit from Geek. He had worked on a Beanie and Cecil project. And, you know, I wasn't friends or anything. I didn't really know him that well. But Bruce's art is so amazing. And just to watch him draw is like, I feel weird, because I was like geeking out to him. No, you know, I know it's the name of your show, but yes, while he was drawing a storyboard, and I had to, like, I took a break from what I was doing, which was an Alf cartoon, I think, at the time, and I had to ask him can I just watch you draw? And he's like, yeah, knock yourself out, you know. And he was, at that time, you could smoke in the building, and he just sat there like boom, 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 drawing, smoking, and drawing, and it was amazing to see him work. I was already a huge fan. So when I found out that he was the one in charge of this thing, it was like, oh my gosh. And the funny thing was that Nemo project that I was working on, I was doing a Little Nemo. I was working on the models at the time. And so I was kind of like cleaning up a lot of Dave Feast's animation poses and doing some of my own, and I did these whole extensive model sheets for that character, and Bruce saw that in my sketchbook, and I wanted a board actually, but he's like, no, we got board art, so I don't have enough character people, so you're on characters. And I'm like, okay. So those model sheets kind of got me the job. And so then the very first day I came in, he had to, like, you know, we were doing turns on characters and all sorts of things, but he had Man-Bat that he hadn't really licked yet. He couldn't quite. Kevin Nolan had done a bunch of them, and I, like, did this, you know, he wanted a really monstrous one, and I did this really cool monstrous thing, and I made his fingers like his wings, because I thought that was important to me, because I didn't like the way they came out in the Neil Adams comics, when they come out of his wrists kind of in an unnatural way, that it's like, that's not the way the wing works. And I kind of came up with the thing. Bruce was like, okay. And then, you know, we kept like, you know, and then another character designer, Mike Kim, came along, and he nailed it. He got that Man-Bat out, you know, but my wings stayed. so I got my imprint on Man-Bat, you know. But,
I remember that action figure that the fingers kind of each one went out a little bit further into the wing to kind of make it. And that was like, that's one of the things that struck me about that particular figure. And again, when those figures were coming out, I'm like, Mom, I want one of these. I'm like buying these right off the shelf. And they're so cool that they're now that DC is redoing those from their DC Direct line.
They're doing great. They're doing great. They're wonderful.
Figures. Yeah, everything else on that show. We're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
If you're listening right now, you can. If you've got a question for either Rick or Dan, you can shoot us a text at 84126. Again, just make sure you put your name and where you're from. So Brian from O'Fallon or Kristen from Chesterfield, and then your question. We'll get it out live on the air. If you do decide to text us, you will put your name in for a drawing. We've got a Batman Animated Series prize pack that we'll be giving out with some goodies from our friends at Kokomo Toys in Kokomo, Indiana. So you're not eligible, Dan. You can't do it.
Well, what about me?
No, I'm sorry, Rick. No actual guess. I apologize.
But I drove here.
All right, well, we'll see. All right, so Rick and Dan are in the drawing, too. All right, that's fine. But stay tuned. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio. We'll be right back on the Big 550 KTRS.
Hi, this is Andrea Romano. I happen to be the voice director for many animated series, including the Justice League. You are listening on Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back. Geek to Me Radio, heard here every Sunday night on the Big 550 KTRS. If you missed my interview from last week with Andrea Romano, go over to geektomeradio.com and check it out there, along with the host of my other shows. This episode tonight is 323. So if you're just now tuning in for the first time, you got a lot of catching up to do. Want to make sure we tell you about our official comic book store sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games, right there on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. You can get to them through either the Page extension or from Highway 70. Get off on Bryan Road and head to the place to get your comic book needs, be it supplies, back issues, new issues, games, vintage stuff, toys, action figures. Larry and Tim have a great stock of stuff at their store over there. I know for a fact they've got some Batman Adventures comic books because I was just there Saturday. I was like, ooh, he's got some of these. But they're always stocking new stuff because he's always buying collections. And if that might be you, maybe you're wanting to unload some of your collection. Maybe you've got too much. You just want to clean house. You don't want it anymore. Then you might want to give Larry and Tim a call at Bugs Comics and Games, and I'm sure he'll get you a really good price for your collection. Make sure you join the Avengers Club while you're there, so you're saving money on your hobby. That's right. You join the Avengers Club, and you start saving money on your new comic books, your back issues, your supplies, your games, all the stuff you need. With the prices the way they are these days, saving money everywhere you can helps. Don't cut back on your hobby. Just join the Avengers Club, save money right there, and keep buying your stuff and enjoying your comic books. And please make sure to give them a like on Facebook, facebook.com. Look for Bugs Comics and Games. And of course, if you're outside the greater St. Louis area, check out their website, bugscomicsandgames.com. Maybe you can find a variant cover that your local comic book store might not have, and they'll ship it right to your door. Very proud to have them as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. Once again, bugscomicsandgames.com for all your comic book needs. We're talking with three-time Emmy-winning, I got it right that time, Emmy-winning director Dan Riba. We've got three-time Eisner Award-winning writer Rick Burchett. We're talking about, obviously, Batman, the animated series, as we're celebrating all things Batman. Yesterday was Batman Day. Dan, did you do anything exciting for Batman Day?
I just posted something on Facebook, and I recently went last week down to Burbank where they have a beautiful statue of Batman there. So I paid my respects.
Very nice. Very nice. And Rick, anything special?
I lived with the guy for 15 years.
Frankly.
Yeah, and I'm still not considered a Batman artist, so I don't know. I'm kind of ticked off.
That would tick me off. And you just did that series with Alan Burnett. You kind of came in and filled in for Ty Templeton on that. Kind of they rebrought. I don't want to say relaunched it, but they brought it back again, the new Batman Adventures again.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, we try to live every day like it's Batman Day.
That's true. It was every day was Batman Day. I have my license plate on my car says Gotham, and people ask me why I did that, and I said, well, he paid for the car.
Yeah.
That's nice work if you can get it. Yeah. And I was sitting. I'm jealous of you guys because you were talking about we had to watch the cartoon for our work. Yeah, that didn't fly for me. I try that with my wife sometime. What are you doing? Well, I've got these people on the show tonight. I got to watch this series. No, get up and vacuum. So it doesn't work for me at all. I'll tell you. And I was going to ask too, Dan, but some of the episodes you directed are obviously just iconic ones, and some of my very favorite of the series, Fire from Olympus, because I think Maxie Zeus is an underrated character. I love his appearances and I love how that one ends too, where he's being wheeled into Arkham, because obviously Kevin has talked before, Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, how he comes from a theater background, and he compared the idea of Batman and Bruce Wayne, the tragic thing, to Hamlet and everything. And there's that scene in Fire from Olympus where they're wheeling him into Arkham, and he sees Poison Ivy as Demeter, and he sees Two-Face as Yanis. And that's such a cool episode. I love that one. Yes.
Yeah, it mythologizes everything at the end. I really do love that. It was one of the things that it's funny because that show doesn't get as much love. So I'm glad that you responded to it, because we took a different track from that. Instead of sort of explaining where he came from and showing his descent into madness or whatever event that caused him to snap, we're introduced to him after he's already snapped, and we're seeing the effects on the people close to him. So it was more of the story about his girlfriend and the people who work for him and all that stuff, and how they have to deal with a crazy person. which was a kind of a different take. But a lot of people don't respond to it because it doesn't follow that mold of the regular shows.
Well, I think I remember we were talking, I can't remember who I was discussing this with, but the only people who didn't, and now that you say that about Maxie Zeus, I didn't think about that, but that's true, but literally almost everyone else except Joker, Catwoman, and Penguin got an origin story. We saw the development of Harvey Dent into Two-Face. With Pretty Poison, we got Poison Ivy's backstory and her origin. We got that with most people. Obviously, with Riddler, we saw his coming into being the Riddler with If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich?
Right.
Rick, do you guys remember, did you guys do an origin issue of any of that, or was it just kind of like having the characters?
I'll tell you what, the only time we did an origin issue, it wasn't from one of the Rogues Gallery. We created a character, a French kind of superhero we called him the Hunchback. And he was like, an anti-hero type character that we did in Gotham Adventures, and that was the only time we ever created any kind of origin story.
When the art style shift, because obviously we've got that noticeable change in art style, more angular form when we went into the new Batman Adventures. Did that affect at all? Because I asked Andrea, I'm like, when the art style changed, or when you brought in, like when Clive Revel was replaced with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., did you guys did you have to do anything different? It's like, okay, we want the character to sound the same, but it now looks different in these two different series. And we'll start with Rick. Did that affect it all on going from the original style to kind of that more angular version? Did it affect it all how you approach the comic?
I found it easier.
Really?
I found it a lot easier. Because it was whenever you're trying to recreate something that someone else has done and recreate it on many levels, being able to see it from 360 degrees and everything, the more angular, the more geometric it is, the easier it is to recreate. Now, the original design, it has a lot more curves to it. It's a lot rounder, and recreating a curve is not as easy as recreating a straight or a bent line, because it starts here and it ends here. Whereas a curve, it's like, okay, where's the apex of that curve? Where does it start? Where does it end? And it's hard to get, which is what my job was. If somebody didn't get that right, I had to go in and fix it. So it was, but when I thought the redesigns were just brilliant. I mean, when I saw them, I was like, oh my God, you thought this show couldn't get any better, and they just, And
it certainly helped Kenner, because they got a whole new batch of Batman. They'll put the new Batmobile, the new Batwing, and everything like that. So that helped Kenner toy sales too. Yeah. I mean, Dan, you've got an artist sensibility, obviously. When you were directing, though, did the style have any influence on you at all when you were directing and kind of involved in the series?
Well, to some degree. I mean, what Rick is saying applies to storyboard artists and the designers as well. It was a little bit easier. There are certain aspects of like how Batman had no highlights, or very simple ones now, so that when he would drop into shadows, you didn't have those highlights to kind of like, tip him off, to show off. So you had to be very careful how you did that, so that it wasn't just unless you wanted just the eyes in the darkness, we had to make sure that things, because we used flat black on our backgrounds. Right, yeah. We really, so things, you had to be more careful how to place him on a background. But Bruce outlined all that stuff. He made rules for everything, and it made it easy. I kind of liked also the fact that the yellow bat symbol thing, which was the new look Batman. I'm not super old. Well, I am now, but I'm old enough to remember as a child my brother collecting comics and seeing the original like Dick Sprang and Shelley Baldoff covers and Batman, and seeing that transition into the, and I remember my brother balking. He's not Bat Signal, man. That's dumb. I don't like that yellow,
And see, my guy growing up, I grew up, and he remains to this day, just I think one of the best is Jim Aparo. And so I grew up with that yellow circle. Yeah. So when they did make the switch, they did it in the Justice League, the JLA comic books and everything like that came out with Mark Waid was writing those. And I was like, that took me some getting used to. Same with the art change for Batman Adventures.
But I always gravitated towards it. So when we did that, any flashback where it was like the first Batman without the yellow symbol, it was like, oh, this is cool. And so, it actually made it a little easier to not have to draw that yellow oval. It's sort of silly.
That's hard because, even going back and when Bob Kane was doing it, but it was really Joe Giella doing the comics, Joe Giella would put a circle around it. It wasn't an oval. It was a circle.
No. What's funny is seeing the early Justice Leagues where they took Sikowski's Batman and then it's like this really sloppy oval around the symbol, and he would draw a really big one sometimes, and it was like this big awkward thing that they'd have to, till they adjusted to actually drawing it, from the get-go.
And if you're listening right now, we're talking with Rick Burchett and Dan Riba all about Batman, the animated series. We're going to take our last commercial break here. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk more with these two gentlemen. Please stand by. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio right here on the Big 550 KTRS.
This is Ed Asner, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio. I can't tell you how exhausting it's been humoring this geek. He is terribly costly and time-consuming. I ask for mercy, and there is none to be had with this geek.
The great Ed Asner obviously voiced Roland Daggett in Batman the Animated Series, and fantastically enough, Granny Goodness in the Justice League cartoons as well. That's another episode. If you've not heard that interview with Ed Asner, I encourage you to go back to geektomeradio.com and check that out. I'm very proud of that one. I was very happy we had him on for his 90th birthday, and we spent the whole hour talking. He was absolutely brilliant, and it's very sad when I think that people like that just aren't with us anymore. It makes me very sad to think about, but I'm very glad that I was able to have him on the show. We'll make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor. Without these people, we would not have been on the air for a little over 6 years now, so we have to thank the City of St. Charles, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. Obviously, people who have listened since the beginning know the website, discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. If you are looking to plan a trip, maybe, you got the kids in school, you're like, hey, let's go someplace this fall. Let me tell you, please come to St. Charles, because if you're a Halloween fan, we're getting into the fall, folks. It's just a few days away until we get that autumn season hits. And Halloween, my very favorite holiday of all, St. Charles does it up big with their Legends and Lanterns Festival. 3 weekends, the last 3 weekends of October, you can interact with the likes of Lizzie Borden. The Phantom of the Opera is out there. Stingy Jack, who we get the modern-day Scarecrow from, and a lot of living history characters. You can go up and down the street, talk to these people. It's a lot of fun. It's a family-friendly event. They have their Scare Glow, which is a holiday scarecrow museum where you can go through the merchants put out their scarecrows. You vote on that in the straw poll, cleverly enough. It's a lot of fun, and even if there's always something going on. It doesn't have to be a holiday, although they certainly do the holidays right. If you just want to get out, see someplace new, travel someplace you haven't been before, check out St. Charles. Plan your trip. Start at the website, discoverstcharles.com. And if you're local and you haven't been over there lately, my goodness, they got some new restaurants have opened up that you will want to get over there and check out. You can have Salt and Smoke for dinner, pop right across the street to the Tompkins House for cocktails, stroll down to Riverside Suites, have a gooey butter milkshake, something like that, and just spend the day having fun. Get out and enjoy the last days of summer while they're here. Run around in Frontier Park. All sorts of fun to be had. And your trip starts at the website. Once again, discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Chatting with Dan Riba and Rick Burchett on the show here still for a little bit longer. Dan, with all the celebrities, I asked Andrea this, and Andrea doesn't like to pick favorites, because she's like, oh, there was this person was great, and this, I can't believe I got to work with this person. And she got some near misses that she almost had. Christopher Lee was almost the voice of Ra's al Ghul. I want to ask you, did you have someone who you were just, you kind of geeked out about when you found out they were coming in to do a voice?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you can keep in mind we had so many different shows that I worked on. So yes, but there were times when I was like Gilbert Gottfried doing Mixes Pitlick for Superman, but he wasn't in house, so that was heartbreaking because I wanted to meet him, and so that was kind of a oh well. But at least he's I was in the booth. I heard his voice from the booth. So it was cool.
And it's just all these great people who came through, and like I said, we're still here talking about it with the distinct art style. With that, because it was the first one that was done in that black background, which was brand new. No one had ever done that before. It was different, I guess, when you guys were in the comic books. You guys, Rick, you don't start in a black background. You guys still do the white pages, right? That didn't affect how you did the art style for the comics.
No, but with the first collection of the comics that was done, I did a wraparound cover for it. And the wraparound cover was basically Batman on a rooftop, and a few of his nemesis were on a roof just below him, and then there was a cityscape in the background. So what I did is I inked it on cell acetate, I painted it with cell acrylics, and then I used an airbrush and painted the background on black paper.
Oh, how about that?
So you would lay the acetate over the background on black paper, and that's what went in as the background. That's what they used.
Huh. I don't know if I've ever seen the wraparound cover. I'm going to have to see if I can source that.
Yeah, it was the first collection done, I don't know, we'd been doing the book for about 2 years.
So it was like a collected trade almost?
Yeah,
The wraparound?
It was a trade.
Okay.
And that was the first trade that was done, and the cover was done that way. I thought it'd be fun to try to recreate what those guys had done.
Yeah, that sounds like it was quite an undertaking.
Yeah.
And with this show having so many, we got introduced to Renee Montoya in the series, who then went on to the comic books. Now she became the new Question, and she had a great story. Obviously, Harley Quinn is now the leader of Suicide Squad. We're seeing Margot Robbie pop up with her in this latest James Gunn movie, doing a brilliant job of that. It's amazing how the comic book has given life to a lot of these characters. And for those of you who are listening right now, tune in next week, because we've got Ingrid Olio will be on the show with us, who voiced Renee Montoya, and I'll have a special pre-recorded interview because she couldn't be live. I'm going to have Adrienne Barbeau talking about voicing Catwoman as well.
Awesome.
And we'll hear from Kevin Conroy towards the end of the show next week as well. But let me ask the two of you, who was your top 3 favorite characters? Either we'll start with Dan, to either just because of the direction or the way they were drawn. Did you have 3 favorite characters from the series?
Oh my goodness! Oh boy, that's a gee. It's like Andrea. It's hard to pick your the children. It's like it's like I always liked. I loved drawing the Joker. He was really fun. A Baby Doll was a blast to do. And there's nothing better than drawing Batman. I mean, that's so much fun. So yeah. Boy.
Rick, what about you? Did you have either from a drawing standpoint or just favorite character period?
From the drawing standpoint, I loved to death the design of Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Bullock.
Yes.
I loved those designs so much. I loved whenever I got to play with those guys. And if I had the Riddler and Joker, just because I could use so much body language with them.
Yeah.
They were, whereas the Batman just is kind of this obelisk standing there in black. Having those characters that can express themselves visually with gestures or the way they're standing or their facial expressions, those are tons of fun.
Yep. And go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No. I'd say that's true. That's true. That's really that applies as well. Yeah, I get that.
And it's like I said, it's such an iconic series that we're still here talking about. And I was telling the other producer, Luis, when he came in, I was telling Outdoors Dan on the last show. I was just at Terrificon in Connecticut. Kevin Conroy was there. And it was so neat because there's a guy, if I had to guess, maybe a few years older than me, but he had his son with him. And I was standing in line behind the guy with his son. He's like, "Yeah, man, I loved watching this series. I'd come home from high school and I'd watch it every day, every time it was out." And now he's bringing his son dressed in a Kevin Conroy Batman costume to meet Kevin Conroy, and that says it all right there. So I'm going to ask you both because we're drawing into the end of the hour. I'm not sure how it flew by. I'll ask you both what you each think, and I'll start with Rick this time. What you think is behind the staying power of this particular series?
It's because there were a lot of smart people working at Warner Animation at the time, and they took the entire history of Batman, and they looked at all of it, and they kept what worked, they threw out what didn't, and they mixed it together in a new way, and it's timeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dan, same question?
Yes, but I'll also, there was something at the time that cartoons never really felt real. They didn't seem to reflect any kind of reality. And even though this is fantastic and a guy dresses in a suit and fights criminals, and there's something about the motivations that felt more real, that it all felt plausible. And I think that that's something that people really connect to emotionally to the show. That they're real, that feels more real than a superhero show that anyone had seen before.
And we had those great episodes that were very kind of grounded, like I've got Batman in my basement, which was, you never saw anything like that with cartoons. It's a bunch of kids are trying to keep Batman safe from the Penguin in this kid's basement. But we've got those episodes like Baby Doll, where that was a new character also. We didn't have anything like her in the comic books, and it was, I think, in my opinion, the thing that Batman the Animated Series did best is it made you sympathize with the villains. We have Heart of Ice with Mr. Freeze. We've got Pretty Poison, where you kind of feel bad for Poison Ivy. She's trying to look out for the world as a whole. Clayface just wants his life back. Baby Doll wants to be, she missed out on all this. She wants to have, like, that heartbreaking episode where she kind of latches on to Killer Croc. I think that was in the New Adventures. But I think this is the first that I can remember series that made the villains relatable. You felt for them. And I think that's one of the things that this show
absolutely
set the bar for and did better than any show previously. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, well, and no one was really allowed to do that before, really. You didn't really, people didn't do shows that were this noir,
Yeah.
That wasn't really the focus. So it was great that everybody behind the series understood that about Batman, and by that, not just us on the show, but the network letting us get away with things that we wouldn't have been allowed to do otherwise.
Right.
We got jealousy from other shows because they were like, "How come you get to use guns? We can't use guns, and how come you can't do? How come you get to do these things? We can't do this stuff." And yes, we were lucky. And it was because it was Batman, and everybody understood that was the nature of the character, and we were trying to do it right, and everybody was behind us on that.
Absolutely. And we've got just a few minutes left before I'm going to talk to these gentlemen about one last thing before we go, but I need to make sure that you all are aware of our official movie sponsor, Marcus Theaters. If you've not been out to see The Woman King or some of these other great films that are out right now, no better place to see these movies than at Marcus Theaters. They've got locations all over the place between their Marcus Theaters and their Movie Tavern. If you don't know if one's close by you, go to the website, marcustheaters.com. You can find the location closest to you, check out movie times, buy your tickets. And I was about to hold my phone up, but we don't have a camera today. Again, I apologize to Dan. We don't have a camera today. But I was going to show you the app because there's a Marcus Theaters app. So I just went out to visit my sister in Virginia for her vow renewal. I'm like, let's see if there's a Marcus Theater close to me. So I was able to pull up the app. And if there's one close by, you can buy your tickets. You can order your concessions right there. So they're ready and waiting for you when you go in. You just zip in, grab your concessions, head right into your theater. If there's all these great movies, and I specifically remember seeing Batman Mask of the Phantasm on the big screen, and there's nothing that's going to recreate that feeling of seeing these on the big screen. You can have the best possible surround sound, you can have the huge plasma TV and everything like that. It's not the same as those moments you get when you're seeing one of those movies on the big screen with a crowd full of people all just sharing that common experience. And that's one of the things I missed most during the pandemic, was being able to go to the movie theater and sit with my big bucket of popcorn. So I'm so glad movies are back. And we're getting into scary season, folks. Smile is going to be out pretty soon. The last Halloween movie is going to be coming out. I say the last, but we'll see how that goes. But all these great movies, Halloween's a great time to get out and see scary movies. Never a bad time, especially if you're seeing a movie in the best possible surroundings. Once again, head to the website, marcustheaters.com, for the best movie-going experience in the galaxy. I want to thank both the gentlemen for coming in. Well, Rick for coming in, for Dan for taking time out of his Sunday. Dan, I know you're working on another project, and I know you can't say too much about it, but what can you tell us?
I am directing the first movie in the Young Captain Nemo franchise.
Oh, wow.
Based on a book series, not on the previous on the previous thing that I was discussing earlier. This is a completely new thing, Young Captain Nemo. And I'm working with I don't know if I can even say that.
Those NDAs.
Actually, there is a press release that has been on it's like on Variety and all sorts of things. So if you look up Young Captain Nemo online, they'll give you all the information you can, including I some of the people that I'm working with, and it's like there's at the studios. It's cool.
And so we'll look for that to be. Do they have an expected release date, like when we can kind of tentatively look for it?
Nope. No, I cannot tell you any of that.
Okay, all right.
It's a studio's Rainshine. I'm working with, actually, I can't say this because this is part of the release. Henry Gilroy, who actually wrote his very first television script for Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's like, so I know him from a long time back, and he is part of the. I can mention that, but anything else.
Okay, we'll leave it there then, because I don't want you to get a call after this episode here airs, and you're like, Dan, you shouldn't have said that.
I just realized now, but it's okay. It's okay because it's part of that. It's in that release. So it's just look it up, Young Captain Nemo. So it's going to be great.
Very cool. It's been great because I just love talking about Batman the Animated Series, and this is a great time to celebrate it. Like I said, Batman Day was just yesterday, and obviously this is the 30th anniversary. And I'm surprised that Warner Brothers hasn't done something for the 30th. I know we just got, I guess it was for the 25th that they re-released the series on Blu-ray, but I was kind of hoping for something and I know Kevin was kind of disappointed because I talked to Kevin. I'm like, and he said, yeah, I thought they would have announced something or done something for it, but maybe they're only doing it on the 5th numbered years. Maybe for the 35th year we'll get something.
I don't know. Yeah, I hope I live long enough for the 50th.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you will. If I'm still on the air, we can have you guys back on here to talk about it in another 20 years.
Wait a minute. Do you know how old I am?
I'm gonna say you're a scrappy 51.
Oh boy, are you off? Let me give you a hint. Eisenhower was in the White House when I was born.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. So it's a little bit further off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. You don't look it, if let me put it like that.
Take your vitamins, exercise. You'll be here for the 50th.
Exactly. And again, I will say, if you did not see the new series that's out, I'm sure the trade's out by now too, from the new Batman Adventures that Rick worked on with Alan Burnett. Great series, and it follows along so well. Picks right up where the animated series left off. So I highly recommend that as well to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. And
they're gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of Batman to be had. Thank you to Dan Riba. Thank you to Rick Burchett for coming in tonight. I want to make sure you go check us out on YouTube. We weren't live on YouTube tonight. My executive producer, Joey V, had the night off, but we'll be back next week with video, hopefully. And make sure you subscribe to YouTube. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers before the end of September. So go over to youtube.com, find Geek to Me Radio, hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Make sure you stick around. Max on Movies is up next. Another great show talking all about movies. And until next week, my friends.
It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Bloodhaven. Good night.
Hey kids, are your parents about to buy you a shiny new toy from Amazon?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Well, don't be selfish. Share some of that money with us. Before going on Amazon, make sure to type in bit.ly/geek2me in the web browser. It will look just like Amazon.com, except it'll say referral Geek to Me Radio up top. And then when you check out, a tiny percentage will go to support the show without costing you 1 cent more. So before your parents get you that gizmo, gadget, or widget, make sure they type in bit.ly/geek2me in the web browser.
Bit.ly/geek2me. Bit.ly/geek2me.